To the left of the Visio 2010 screen, you see what are called stencils. Stencils are really important when creating a drawing because this is where you get your shapes from. When I look at my stencils, I can see I'm seeing a cross-functional flowchart shaped stencil, and I'm seeing a basic flowchart shaped stencil, and even a quick shape stencil. So you can see what's in each stencil simply by clicking its title. You can also drag a stencil out of this area and float it on the screen. I'm going to drag basic flowchart shapes and move it out onto my screen. So I can float it over here, and then I can easily drag out shapes as I need them. I can close that stencil by hitting the cross, or I can drag it and put it back into my collection of stencils. I can even drag the title up to rearrange the order of my stencils. In addition to the stencils you're given, you can open up more stencils by going to More Shapes. If I click More Shapes, I can get stencils that fall into the categories of Business, Flowchart, General, etc. If I go to Visio Extras, I might ask for metric symbols. When I click that, I now have another stencil which gives me a whole lot of symbols. If I wish to move symbols around, I can simply drag a symbol like handicap and drag it up towards the top of the stencil because I use it a lot. Or I might drag dining and move that up because I use that a lot as well. So you can rearrange shapes within your stencils, and you can bring up as many stencils as you need. You can also right click the name of a stencil and close it if you don't want the stencil to show anymore. And you can also float that window by using this option as well as dragging it. The way that you view shapes in a stencil is also controlled by the View option. At the moment I'm seeing icons and names in my stencils, but I may choose to choose icons only because I don't need to see the names of the shapes. Or I can right click back on the name of the stencil, go back into View and return it to icons and names. The other thing that you can do is you can actually create your own stencil. What I'm going to do here is go to More Shapes, and I'm going to create a new stencil in metric because we're New Zealand. Here is my new stencil. Now all I have to do is drag or drop shapes into here. So if I go to symbols, for example, I might decide to drag the dining shape onto my stencil and drop it into here. And there's dining. I might go to basic flowcharts and grab perhaps the process shape and put it into my stencil as well. Oops, do that again. Into my stencil and into here. So drag it onto the name of the stencil and then drag it into the stencil. You can also create your own shapes. For example, I had a situation recently where I had a shape that needed to be created. Let's use this as an example. So I'll take this shape, then I'll press Ctrl D to make a duplicate, but it's a lot smaller. It sits also in this top corner, and it has a work breakdown code. It might also be a different colour, so I'll change the fill colour. And then I want to group this as one shape, so I'll click this shape, hold the shift, click this shape, and I'll group them together. This is a shape that I want to use regularly, so I'm going to drag the shape and stick it in my stencil. And now I want to give it a name, so I'll right click it, go into Edit Master and Master Properties, and this is my work breakdown code shape. And OK. When I want to save this stencil, which contains all the shapes that I use on a regular basis, I'll hit the Save button. When I hit the Save button, Visio wants to save it as a VSS file. So I'll call it Kathy's Stencil. And I'll save. If I then look here, I can see Kathy's Stencil. And if I right click it and close it, then it no longer appears. But then if I want to open it, I go to More Shapes and I go down to Open Stencil. And then I would just locate the particular VSS file, choose it and open it. And now I'm seeing the stencil that's got all the shapes that I use on a regular basis. And I can easily add any of the shapes from my stencil. It also makes it great for sharing stencils with other people. So if there's a group of you and you create a specific type of diagram all the time, then you might want to create a particular stencil that has all the various shapes that you need and then email that VSS file to the other persons. and then they can open it in their Visio and they have easy access to the sorts of shapes they need when they're creating that type of diagram.